Hi everyone, this is Bilal Khan and you are watching Simplified Coding. In this video, we will learn how we can generate an endless ground in our game. As we need to keep creating grounds because it is endless. And instantiating an object is heavy operation. So it is a good idea to keep some grounds already instantiated and use it whenever needed. As in the viewable scene, that is our camera area, we need maximum of 2 grounds at a single time. So when the camera moves this side, we will generate the grounds, and all the grounds that are this side, we will set it to deactivated. And whenever we need to display more grounds, we will use the ground objects from the deactivated grounds. And this way, we will make our game efficient in performance. So basically what I am saying is we need to reuse our grounds, and this concept of reusing the same objects is called pooling. So first we need to create a script inside our scripts folder. So right click, create C# script, and I will create object pooler. Open the script. And inside the script we do not need this update function, so I will delete it, and I will also delete the comment. And the first thing inside this class we need is our game object, because right now we need to pool our ground, but later we may need to pool other objects as well. So that is why I created a common name, that is object pooler. And inside this class, first we will define the object that we need to pool, and this object is also a game object. So we will define public game object, and we can name it pooled object. Then we will define the amount of the objects that we need to pool. So I will define an int, which is number of object. And then finally we will create a list to store all the pooled objects. So we will define private list, and the type is game object, and we can name the object as game objects like this. Then inside the start function we will initialize this list. So we have game objects equals to new list game object. Then we will loop to instantiate the number of objects. So we will loop from int I equals to 0, I is less than number of object, and I++. And for every iteration we will create a game object. So we will create game object equals to instantiate. We use this function to instantiate an object, and we will instantiate the pooled object. Now this means our object is added to our scene. But we will set the game object active status to false because the object is added in our scene but it is not active. And to do this we will write game object dot set active, and we will set it to false. Then finally we will add this game object to our game object list. So right here game objects dot add, and then pass the game object. That's it. Now we will create a function to get the pooled object, and let's create a function public game object, because this function will return us a game object. So whatever the pooled object is, this function will return. So we have public game object, and we can name this function as get pooled game object, or you can name it anything you want. Now inside this function we will loop through all the game objects that are inside the list. So we will write here for each, and we have game object in game objects. So for each game object in game objects. Then we will check if the game object is active or not. So here we will write if not game object dot active in hierarchy. And if the object is not active, we will directly return the object. So we will write return game object, because we need the object that is not active and then we can reuse the object. But in that case, when all the objects in our list is active, we need to create a new object. So here we will write game object equals to instantiate, and we will instantiate the pooled object. We will set the game object dot set active to false, and we will add this game object to our list. So we will write game objects dot add and then game object, and then finally we will return this game object. That's it. So we have our object pooler class, and we have an error here, that is game object does not contain definition for active in hierarchy. So the issue is I misspelled the hierarchy. It is hierarchy. So that error is gone. Now another error is game object cannot be declared, and it is the issue because I already have a game object here, so I cannot name this game object. So all the errors are gone. I just changed the game object name because I already used the game object here, so we cannot create the object of the same name. So everything is fine. You can see the game is running fine. Now we will create one more empty object here inside our scene, and I will name it grounds. And all the objects related to the ground, I will put it inside this grounds. And inside this grounds, I will create one more empty object, and I will name it ground pooler. Inside the ground pooler, we can create one more empty object, and I will name this thing ground pooler as well. And I will rename the first one to ground poolers. So rename it and make it ground poolers. Now we will have 3 ground pooler because we have 3 type of grounds. So this is ground pooler 1, and let's add the object pooler script to this ground pooler 1. So we have the object pooler, and we will define the number of object that we want to pool is 2. You can define any number, but 2 is enough, I think. And to the pooled object, I will define the small ground. So you just need to drag the small ground to your pooled object, and it is added to the pooled object. And the same way we will create 2 more, and it is ground pooler 2 and it is ground pooler 3. To the ground pooler 2 we will define medium ground, and to the ground pooler 3 we will define large ground. So we have pooler for all our grounds. Now we need to move this medium ground little bit here like this, and large ground here. That's it. Now we will define our ground generator here at the end of this medium ground. So let's create one more empty object, and we will name it ground generator. And if you want to make it on the center of this ground, then what you can do is put it inside your medium ground and make all the positions 0. Now it is on the exact center of our medium ground. Now push it back and make it here. So we have our ground generator. Now what I will do is I will make the ground generator here at the end. So we have the ground generator here. Now we also need one more point, that is our ground generation point. So we will create one more empty object inside our main camera and we will name it, let's say, ground point, and we will put it somewhere here like this. So this is the point. So we need to create grounds to fill this gap. So whenever our camera will move, there is an empty gap from here to here. We will fill it by generating all the grounds or by adding the grounds that we have pooled. So that is the thing we need to do. So we have ground point, we have our ground poolers, and we have ground generator. Now go to scripts and we need to create one more script and I will name it ground generator. Now inside this class, first we will define the generation point. So we will define public transform and I will name it ground point, or you can name it whatever you want. Then we will define an array to store all our poolers, our ground poolers. So we will write here public object pooler, and it is an array because we have 3 poolers, and we will name it ground poolers. Then we need an array of float to store all the widths of the ground because all our grounds are of different size. So we will define private float and I will name it ground widths. Now inside our start function, first we will initialize our ground widths array. So we will write here ground widths equals to new float, and to the size of this array we will define the length of our ground poolers. So we will write here ground poolers dot length. That's it. Now we will loop through all the ground poolers and we will get the width of all the grounds. So we will write for int I equals to 0, I is less than ground poolers dot length and I plus plus. Then we will get the ground widths. So we will write here ground widths I, that is the ground width index, equals to, and we will get the width from our ground poolers. So first we will get the object that is pooled inside this ground pooler, and then we will get the width of that object. So we will write here ground poolers I dot pooled object, because this ground poolers is an object of object pooler, and inside this object pooler we have this pooled object, so we are calling this pooled object. So we have ground poolers I dot pooled object, and then we will call get component to get the box collider that we have in our ground. So this pooled object will give us a ground, and from that ground we will get the box collider 2D to get the width. So we have box collider 2D, and we will get the size of the collider, and we will get the X. That's it. Now come inside update, and first we will check if transform, because we will attach this script to our ground generator, and our ground generator point is here. This is our ground generator. So we will check if this X, so we have transform dot position dot x if it is less than this point x. So we will write ground point dot position dot x. So if it is less than ground point x, that means there is a gap and we need to fill it. Now we will get a random ground from our object poolers. So we will generate a random number here. So let's generate an int random, and we can generate it from random.range, and we will generate from 0 to ground poolers.length. So we have ground poolers.length. Now we can use this random to get a random object from ground poolers. And we also need to get the distance that we need to move our ground generator in x-axis, because if we will generate our ground here, you can see it generates from the center. So we need to move half of the generating ground width, then only it can generate the ground from here. So we need to get the half of the ground widths. So first we will define a float distance and we will get the half of the ground widths. So here we will write ground widths and random divided by 2. Then finally we will move the position of our ground generator from here to the half of the ground width. So here we will write transform dot position equals to new vector 3, and to this vector 3 first we will pass transform dot position dot x, and we will add this distance. Then transform dot position dot y and transform dot position dot z, because we just need to change the x. That's it. Then after changing the ground generator position, we will get our pooled object. So we will create a game object and we will name it ground, and we will get it from our ground poolers. So we have ground poolers, and we will get the random ground pooler, the random number that we generated here, and from this random ground pooler we will call get pooled object. So we have the pooled object, that is our ground. We will set our ground status to active. So we will write ground dot set active and we will set it to true. So now this ground is active. And we also need to set the position for this ground, and we will set the position as this transform dot position. So here we will write ground dot transform dot position equals to transform dot position. That's it. Now after adding the ground, like we added the ground, now again we need to move our ground generator to the end of the generated ground. So what we will do the same thing after adding the ground, like this, and it is fine. Now go back to Unity, and there is an error in our script. Let's check. Ground generator line number 35. So let's fix it. I just forget a semicolon. Now it is fine. Close the script, and then to your ground generator add the script ground generator. That's it. Now we need to add the ground poolers. So select all the poolers, and what you can do is select ground generator and lock it from here, then select all the poolers and drag it to your ground poolers. So we have 3 ground poolers, and to this ground point we need to define this ground point. So drag it here. Now unlock this thing. So we have the ground point and we have the ground poolers, and I guess everything else is fine. So let's try running the game. And we have some error, and it is inside ground generator. So open the script, and it is just a misspelling. I just written random here, it is random. And we have one more error, which is get pooled object is not defined. And to fix this, open the script, and I created the function named get pooled game object, and here I am writing get pooled object. So that was the issue. Here we need to write get pooled game object, and everything is fine, I think. Let's play the game. Yeah, so you can see our grounds are getting generated, and it will keep generating infinitely. You can see we are getting the grounds here inside our scene, and if you will stop your game, everything is gone. So we have an endless ground in our game now. So that is all for this video, friends. If you are having any confusion, you can comment below, and you can also get my source code. The link to the source code is given in the description of this video. So thanks for watching, and if you liked this video, then please hit on that like button, subscribe to my channel, and share this video with your friends. And thanks for watching everyone. This is Bilal Khan now signing off.